Our protagonist's name is Ga Shaoling, an ordinary college student. His roommate unplugged his alarm charger, so he missed his alarm and had a car accident at 8. Now he has woken up and found himself in an apocalyptic world. A man slashed one of the octopus's tentacles, but the octopus regenerated it at an incredible speed. The man shouted to his comrades that it was no good, and the monster could regenerate. At first, Shaoling thought he was the chosen one. With a halo of glory, he believed he would kill all the monsters and save the world like the main character. But he quickly realized something was wrong. The first time, he led the survivors out of the siege but was bitten by a zombie and died. Yet, when he opened his eyes again, he was back in the same spot. The second time, he used his previous life's experience to lead them through the zombies, but they starved to death. The third time, he disguised himself as a zombie to steal food, but was shot in the head by the military. The fourth time, he finally awakened his powers but was betrayed and killed after establishing his base. Then came the fifth time, the sixth time, and every time he died, he returned to the day he first arrived. Shaoling was frustrated. Knowing it was already his ninth time, he gave up hope and lay flat. But he was still caught as a conscript. Suddenly, the octopus swung all of its tentacles around, and the men who were trying to fight it ran away. One of them shouted that the people in the safe house were still waiting for supplies to save their lives, but the leader yelled that if they didn't run, they would all die there. The men rushed away, leaving behind a poor lady who was caught by the monster, begging for help and pleading not to be left behind. The octopus tightly held the lady, making her cry and scream in pain. Shaoling, who saw it, thought that since there was no way out, he might as well have some fun. This time, at least before he died, he wanted to help the lady. He dashed forward, raised his sword, and released his power, shocking the men. They worriedly asked what he was doing, thinking he was going to get himself killed. Shaoling aimed his sword at the octopus's tentacle and easily slashed it, forcing it to release the lady. She thanked him for saving her, but he just dashed away, shouting for her to run. The octopus chased him as he ran for his life toward a nearby store. Fortunately, he managed to enter the store and began devouring anything he could get his hands on. He grabbed a soda, drinking it excitedly and thinking to himself that he had finally drunk soda again and missed it so much. The octopus, pissed off at seeing him happily drinking inside the store, approached and bent down to look at him closer. It raised its tentacle to squeeze him to death, but Shaoling, still happy, thought to himself that he could die without regrets now. He closed his eyes and then heard the octopus screech. A moment later, he opened his eyes, confused to find himself still inside the store. He looked around, wondering why he was still there and why he hadn't returned to the starting point. He checked his body and asked aloud if it meant he hadn't died. Suddenly, a voice told him that he did die and was revived. Panicking, Shaoling looked around and asked who was talking. The system popped up in front of him and congratulated him for activating it, introducing itself as his bound apocalypse system, code number 2333. A bright light appeared behind him, surprising Shaoling, who then hugged 23333 with tears in his eyes, shouting that it was finally here and that he had been waiting for it forever. He tearfully asked if the system knew how miserable he was and told it to feel sorry for him. 2333 simply bounced away from him and explained that it was late because it had a little accident. Shaoling asked what it meant by accident, and 2333 replied that he might not believe it, but its roommate stole its charger, so its alarm didn't go off. Since Shaoling had experienced it himself, he responded that he believed it. He then told 2333 it was okay to be late and asked if it brought golden fingers, equipment, and plugins. 2333 excitedly replied, yes, but then added that, according to procedure, Shaoling needed to listen to it and read the mission instructions first. 2333 explained that Shaoling was currently in a post-apocalyptic world, and his mission was to save the world and restore it to peace. Only by successfully completing this task could he be resurrected into the real world, but failure would result in complete annihilation. 2333 added that Shaoling had a total of 10 chances and had already wasted 9 of them, meaning this was his last one. Panicked, Shaoling worriedly asked 2333 what he had just done. 2333 told him not to worry about the details because time was short, and they needed to make every minute count. 2333 then released a purple power around Shaoling and told him to get ready for his first mission. The system screen showed his first mission: sell snacks within the day to earn 50 crystals. Upon completion, he could earn points to exchange for attribute values, space area, and other rewards. Shaoling sat in a daze next to a food stall on the ground. Snapping out of it, he clenched his teeth in anger and shouted, asking if he really had to set up a food stall. The zombies nearby turned their heads at the noise and began walking toward him. Panicking, Shaoling ran away while shouting that he was going to get eaten before he could sell anything. While he was running away as fast as he could when 2333 appeared and asked him what he was running from. Shaoling snapped back, asking why he would wait to be bitten. He forcefully stopped himself from running when he remembered that he now had the system. He arrogantly ordered 2333 to wipe out all the zombies for him, which pissed 2333 off. The system shouted at him to call it 2333 properly. Shaoling smirked and asked what his superpower was, demanding the agility of a leopard, the speed of an eagle, and the strength of a bear. 2333 then displayed his status window. Shaoling saw that his strength, speed, perception, and inventory were all not yet rated, while his wisdom was 2 and his stall area was 2 square meters. He asked 2333 what was up with the not yet rated status. 2333 explained that his values were too low to meet the minimum score standard, and that his physical attributes were currently abysmal. If he wanted to improve, he would need to earn points and exchange them. Shaoling groaned and asked if that meant he was only good at brain power. At that moment, one of the zombies caught up to him and tried to grab him. Fortunately, he managed to jump to the side to avoid it. He started running again, shouting at 2333 that it was a liar for claiming he had superpowers. 2333 simply responded that it had already given him his powers. Xiaoling suddenly remembered a saying once upon a time: there was a street vendor no one cared about, and people only regretted it after he was gone. This gave him an idea. He turned to 2333 and asked if it meant the old rag. 2333 angrily asked what he meant by rag, shouting that it was an upgrade tool. Xiaoling immediately turned around and rushed back toward the stall, shouting in frustration that 2333 should have told him earlier. He grabbed a metal stick lying on the ground and stopped running when a zombie appeared in front of him. He swung the stick and hit the zombie in the neck, managing to push it back. However, a zombie behind him shoved him to the ground, causing him to slam down and drop the stick. Xiaoling immediately rolled toward his stall and jumped inside the rag. The zombies rushed toward him, jaws open and reaching for him. He smiled nervously, unable to believe he was going to die again so quickly. It would be a new record. His hands shook as he thought it was over. Even though he saw food around him, he had no appetite. He covered his head and accepted his fate, but then a shield appeared around the stall. The shield blocked the zombies, hiding him from their vision. Confused, Xiaoling watched in shock as the zombies turned away and walked off. Stunned, he muttered in disbelief, asking if the zombies were blind. 2333 appeared and explained that it wasn't just a rag. Xiaoling immediately grabbed the cloth, realizing it had saved him. He held it to his face and praised it, declaring it wasn't a rag but a silk cloth. He then asked 2333 if the shield function only worked on zombies, and what would happen if other mutated creatures appeared. 2333 explained that the cloth could block any form of attack, and as long as Xiaoling stayed within the range of the stall, nothing from the outside world could harm him. Eyes wide, Xiaoling asked if 2333 was serious. He stood up, closed his eyes, and spun around with his magical rag, thinking he was invincible. 2333, however, warned him not to get too excited. It explained that the shielding function of the stall props could only be used 3 times a day. If he failed to complete the task within the time limit, the function would fail. 2333 reminded him that the sun would set in half an hour. After dark, zombie activity would increase significantly. Xiaoling grumbled that the area had just been swept by zombies, so there was no one around. He asked if they seriously expected him to open a stall there. At that moment, he heard someone say, "Today is really lucky surprised." Xiaoling turned to see 3 men approaching. One of them told his comrades that they had stumbled across an unexpected harvest and that their boss would be surprised. Xiaoling thought to himself that heaven must be helping him. The men approached him, curious about his presence. When they noticed the candy on his food stall, they asked how such things could exist in a place like that. Xiaoling, now excited, enthusiastically told them that the small shop not only had candy but also chips, shrimp chips, and soda. He asked them what they would like to eat. The men were shocked and excited to confirm there were potato chips, beef jerky, and soda, things they hadn't tasted in 3 years. Xiaoling, eager to make a sale, told them it was his first day setting up a stall, and that fate had brought them together. He promised not to sell the goods at 998, or even 98 crystals, but only 50 crystals for all the snacks. Smiling, he asked them if it wasn't a good deal. The men stared at each other in silence before bursting into laughter. They thought Xiaoling must be crazy to expect them to pay for the snacks. One of the men pulled out a gun, grabbed a soda, and mockingly shouted that he was in a good mood, so he would let Xiaoling off with a warning this time. Xiaoling realized they had no intention of paying and snatched the soda back in disappointment. He told them he thought he'd found saviors but had only wasted his time. Angered, the man aimed the gun at him and shouted that he was asking for it. The man pulled the trigger, but the stall's shield blocked the bullet, sending it ricocheting back and striking the man's head armor. The force of the impact made the man dizzy, and he collapsed to the ground, shocking his comrades. The men asked why the gun misfired and wondered if the kid was an Esper. They turned to look at him again, shouting that there was no way he was an Esper, because they had never heard of such a bizarre ability. Meanwhile, Xiaoling was hugging the rag, calling it his treasure and marveling that it could even deflect bullets. Watching him, the men concluded that no matter how they looked at it, he was just an idiot. One of the men demanded to know who he was and what kind of trick he was pulling. Xiaoling simply called them fools and claimed that while there were countless Espers in the world, there was only one chosen one, him. Smiling, he added that for just 50 crystal cores they could take home a massive snack bundle and even get a free signed photo with him. He asked them if they were sure they didn't want to consider the offer. Enraged, the men rushed at him, shouting that they weren't 3-year-olds and insisting that the gun must have malfunctioned. They declared that they would kill him this time, but Xiaoling calmly remarked that some people just never listened and were asking for trouble. One of the men lunged at him and tried to punch him, but as Xiaoling expected, the shield activated and blocked the attack, pushing the man away from the stall. The man screamed in pain when he saw his fingers bent and bleeding. The old man holding a knife hesitated, prompting the other 2 men to yell at him to stop standing around and kill the kid already. Xiaoling glared at the old man, and the intensity of his stare left the man frozen in fear. As the old man approached, visibly shaking, he suddenly stepped back, turned around, and ran away, shouting that the kid was a monster and that he didn't want to die. The 2 remaining men were stunned. They shouted after the old man, calling him a coward and begging him not to leave them behind. However, fear overtook them too, and they turned to follow, leaving Xiaoling standing there shouting that he just wanted to ask if there was anyone else around. Xiaoling's attention shifted to the ground when he noticed the bag the men had been carrying start to move. Curious, he poked it and wondered aloud if it could be some kind of animal. As the bag wriggled more, he unwrapped the rope, and something shot out at incredible speed, startling him. When he got a better look, he saw that it was a lady with long white hair and a thin, almost fragile-looking body. She turned back to look at him, and Shaoling froze in surprise, struck by how beautiful she was. The moment was short-lived, however, as the lady suddenly snapped and dashed toward him. Realizing this wasn't the time to be ogling a beauty, Shaoling turned and ran, thinking she must be a zombie. The lady swung her sharp, claw-like fingers at him, and he barely managed to jump away in time to avoid her attack. He panicked and wondered aloud what the heck was happening, and since when zombies could move so fast. He picked up an empty magazine and hurled it at her, but the lady simply blocked it with her hand and continued chasing him. He sprinted toward his stall, grabbing a rag with desperation, knowing he had already used up all 3 shield chances. He muttered that if he'd known, he would have saved them, because if he got caught now, it was game over. Before he could process what was happening, the lady jumped into the air and landed right in front of him, blocking his escape. Shocked, Shaoling fell to the ground, paralyzed with fear as the lady approached him with piercing, glaring eyes. Desperate, he grabbed food from the stall and threw it at her, hoping it would slow her down. He shouted for her not to come any closer, but she didn't stop. Reaching for the last pack of food near him, he threw it toward her with all his strength, tightly squeezing his eyes shut and bracing for the worst. When nothing happened, Shaoling hesitated before slowly opening his eyes. To his shock, the lady was standing still, happily enjoying the octopus snack he had thrown her. After chewing, she swallowed the snack and seemed happy to have eaten it. Shaoling, watching her reaction, asked himself if zombies like to eat dried squid. Before he could finish the thought, she began moving closer to him with an eager and hungry look on her face. He panicked, realizing the dried squid was gone and unsure if she would eat anything else. Still, he quickly opened another snack and threw it to her when she got closer. To his relief, she accepted it and enjoyed it. Seeing this, Shaoling began throwing more snacks on the ground while slowly backing away. When he finally felt the edge of the cliff beneath his feet, he glanced back and saw lava bubbling far below. Without hesitation, he threw a bag of chips off the cliff and shouted for her to go after it. She immediately jumped, speeding after the falling chips. He wiped the sweat off his forehead in relief and muttered that he had given her snacks, so she shouldn't eat him. Turning around, his eyes landed on a shining weapon, lying on the ground. He picked it up and realized it was a high-grade dagger. His shock deepened when he noticed the symbol of the Thunder Legion etched onto the blade. He knew that the Thunder Legion was the most feared bandit organization in the apocalypse. Their leader was a power-type esper, and every one of their subordinates was a ruthless desperado, burning, looting, and killing with no regard for the military. He figured those 3 men must have been from the Thunder Legion, and thought it made sense that they had carried so many magazines. He then spotted the bag the men had left behind and decided it could be useful, so he picked it up. Something shiny inside caught his attention, and when he opened it, he was excited to find crystal cores. Hugging the bag, he celebrated, not expecting to complete his task so quickly. 2333 interrupted his excitement, telling him that although he had found the crystal cores, they couldn't be counted as store sales. Shaoling argued back, asking why not, especially since the female zombie had accepted and eaten the dried squid and beef jerky. 2333 reluctantly agreed that the crystal cores belonged to her but reminded him that she was a zombie. Shaoling retorted that the system never said customers had to be human and accused 2333 of being narrow-minded. Feeling defeated, Shaoling lay on the ground and shouted to 2333 that it was already dark, there was no one else around, and if the system wasn't going to keep its promise, it might as well just kill him now. 2333 cursed internally, realizing it was in a pinch. With no choice left, 2333 congratulated him on completing the task. It informed him that he had gained experience points, unlocked his inventory, and upgraded his stall. Suddenly, 2333 released a pushcart stall filled with brand new items and food. Shaoling approached it eagerly and opened the legendary inventory. Inside, he found water, rice, meat, and vegetables. Disappointed, he asked 2333 if that was all. He compared it to other people's storage spaces, which supposedly had medicines, weapons, and even planes or cannons. 2333 explained that it was the food system, not the warrior system, earning Xiaoling's complaint that it was stingy. Still curious, he asked what his experience points could be exchanged for. 2333 displayed options and each item's cost points. However, Shaoling only had 21 points. 2333 told him that with his current level of permission, he could only exchange points for basic items. Xiaoling scoffed at the shabbiness of it all and began worrying about his defense. Since the stall shield could only block attacks 3 times a day, he knew upgrades were necessary. Feeling determined, he told 2333 to exchange everything for stamina. 2333 complied and increased his stamina by 1 point. After a brief pause, Shaoling and 2333 stared at each other. He complained that he didn't feel any change, but 2333 ignored him and revealed his next mission to earn 100 crystal cores within 24 hours and hire a waiter. Shaoling shouted in disbelief at the difficulty of earning 100 crystal cores. He complained that the street stall was already tiny, and now they expected him to share it with someone else. As he continued his tirade, a flyer suddenly slapped against his face. Pulling it off, he saw an advertisement for a milk tea shop. The image on the flyer featured the same lady who used to hand out flyers near his school, encouraging students to try her drinks for free. Shaoling worriedly wondered if she was still alive. Despite his concerns, he thought that working with such a beautiful woman wouldn't be so bad. Pushing his cart forward, he felt a surge of motivation. Meanwhile, back at the cliff, the white-haired lady jumped out of the lava and landed on the ground. She looked around, searching for any trace of Shaoling but found nothing. Saddened, she paused for a moment before turning and beginning to run. The next day, Shaoling arrived at the milk tea shop. Peeking inside, he was shocked to see zombies wandering around. He quickly closed the door, apologizing for the intrusion, and immediately pulled his cart while running away. He muttered to himself, wondering if those were the same zombies he had met yesterday, and why they were so persistent. 2333 reminded him that he was the one who had approached them first. As the zombies started chasing after him, one of them jumped toward his cart, but the cart's shield activated and threw the zombie away. Xiaoling rushed behind his cart, yelling at the zombies not to waste his defense. He pushed the cart forward at full speed, and the zombie started moving again, bending its broken body, and began chasing him like Sadako. The zombie got close to biting his feet, but Xiaoling managed to pull his leg away just in time. He shouted in frustration, accusing the zombie of pulling his leg, then kicked it hard, sending it flying into a soda machine. The other zombies stopped in shock as the heavy machine fell, crushing several of them to death. Xiaoling stared in disbelief, unable to process that he had done that with a single kick to the head. He finally realized that the power boost from his stamina upgrade actually worked. 2333 congratulated him on his first kill and rewarded him with a disposable raincoat. Xiaoling picked it up skeptically, asking if it wasn't just a piece of plastic cloth. 2333 explained that he shouldn't underestimate the raincoat. It was made of high-tech materials that could block all harmful substances, and he could even swim in nuclear waste while wearing it. However, it could only be used once. Despite its impressive features, Xiaoling still found it hard to believe. Before he could dwell on it further, the sound of zombies approaching reached his ears. Looking ahead, he saw a massive swarm of zombies converging on his position. He guessed that the noise he had made earlier must have attracted them. Frantically looking around, he realized there was no way to retreat. Suddenly, a voice called out to him. Turning around, Xiaoling saw the yellow-haired lady standing in one of the stores, motioning for him to come over. At that moment, the zombies inside the crushed soda machine revived. The sounds of their movement triggered the nearby zombies, causing the swarm to rush toward him. Panicking, Xiaoling ran for his life toward the lady's store and successfully made it inside just in time. The zombies threw themselves against the door, but it was too strong for them to break through. Catching his breath, Xiaoling gratefully thanked the lady for saving him at the perfect moment. However, as he looked at her more closely, he recognized her. She asked him if he knew her, and Xiaoling eagerly explained that he was a student at a university where she used to promote milk tea. He reminded her that she had even treated him to a free drink once. The lady considered his words and thought to herself that he didn't seem particularly remarkable. With his ordinary appearance, she figured there were probably countless students like him in university. Still, smiling, she told him that she remembered him. She added that he was particularly good at basketball and loved peach-flavored pearl milk tea. Xiaoling immediately corrected her, telling her that he was actually on the football team, and that he didn't even like eating peaches. She didn't mind it and just hugged his hand while telling him that it was great to see him, which made him shy when he felt her warm hug. He then realized that he still didn't know her name. She introduced herself as AI Kyun, and he introduced himself back. She sweetly called him brother, shocking him and making him cry. Because it was the first time in his life a girl had called him brother, he felt lucky, because she was such a beautiful girl. But she wondered why he was crying. He was busy crying when he heard a can roll behind him. He immediately looked back, asking what it was and who was there. He picked up the can and wondered what it was. He was then shocked when he heard a loud banging sound coming from behind the door. He reached for the door's handle, but before he could open it, Kyun shouted that there was a rat and hugged him in fear, shouting that she saw it. He asked her where it was, and she dragged him in the other direction, telling him it had run over there without noticing someone with red eyes hiding behind the door he was about to check. Suddenly, Kyun fell, acting dizzy. He panicked and asked her what was wrong. She replied that she was so hungry because she had been stuck there for 5 days without food. Realizing she was just hungry, he told her it was easy to fix. He then let her down and told her to wait because he would go make her something to eat. Excitedly, he began searching under his cart, asking what he should make: noodles, steamed buns, or cola chicken wings. She stared at him, thinking about the food, and walked closer to his cart. She noticed that he had eggs, flour, and even oil, and she wondered where he found so much food. Smiling, she thought he didn't expect that such a fat sheep like him would make her fortune. She picked up one of the eggs, but it vanished. Confused, she grabbed another egg, but when she moved it away from the cart, it also vanished without her realizing that ingredients from the snack cart could not be stolen, and any items taken without Xiaoling's permission would automatically return to their original position. She wondered what was going on and if she was hallucinating. Walking closer to him, she thought about taking him down first and then claiming everything in the cart for herself. However, when she tried to grab the knife behind her back, she couldn't find it. Panicking and confused, she wondered where her knife had gone. He then asked her if she was looking for it while holding up the knife. She shouted that it was hers and demanded to know how it ended up in his hand. He explained that he had grabbed it when she pretended to be dizzy, but added that cooking requires a knife. Since his little shop had just opened and he didn't have the proper tools yet, he said he would borrow it for now and asked if she didn't mind. She stammered a reply, saying no, but internally wondered how he knew she had a weapon on her and if he had been on guard against her the whole time. She then told him not to misunderstand, saying that she knew how hard it was for a girl to survive in the apocalypse, so the knife was just for self-defense. He simply told her that he believed her. She then asked if he could return the knife once he was done with it, to which he replied yes. After using it, he gave it back to her, telling her the knife was very sharp and advising her not to use it carelessly. She just smiled at him after getting the knife back and positioned herself, suddenly shouting that she thought it worked just fine. She then launched the knife at him, calling him a stupid kid who was so easy to fool and telling him he deserved it if he died. However, the cart's shield deflected her attack and pushed her back. He calmly reminded her that he had told her not to mess around with it, but she just wouldn't listen. She shouted that he was an esper, accusing him of setting her up, and screamed that she would fight him to the death. She jumped and swung her leg down at him with force, but he calmly attacked her with pepper spray, hitting her eyes and making her scream in pain, shouting that it burned. Kyun rolled around on the floor, holding her eyes in pain. He grabbed the mustard and told her that if she couldn't handle spicy, she should have said so because he always made sure to cater to his customers' tastes. He then poured mustard powder on her, asking if she liked barbecue and suggesting adding a little mustard to it. She shouted for him to stop and coughed repeatedly, but he just called out to the people inside the room, warning them that if they didn't come out now, their comrade was going to be pickled. The room door suddenly burst open, and 2 kids rushed outside holding bats, shouting at him to let go of their boss. He was shocked to see them. The little boy shouted to Kyun not to be afraid because they were there to rescue her, and the little girl yelled at him not to dare hurt their boss. He simply grabbed the kids and told them that, at such a young age, they were already causing trouble and gathering a group to harm others. Kyun stood up and shouted at him not to hurt them, challenging him to come at her instead if he had the guts. He threw the kids at her, reminding her that she was the one who said it, and they all stumbled to the floor. A moment later, he checked the room and found instant noodles, biscuits, and canned food. Looking back at the kids and Kyun, who were tied up, he remarked that it looked like many people had already fallen for their trick before him. Kyun admitted that she had never failed until now and asked how he spotted the flaw. He simply replied that he could only say those people were just too stupid. He then picked up an open can and pointed out that Kyun had claimed she'd been stuck there for 5 days without food, yet the can still had leftover soup in it, clearly opened not long ago. He also pointed at fresh bloodstains on the ground and observed that none of them had any wounds, concluding that someone else must have been injured or killed there. Feeling a chill, he realized he had almost become one of their victims. The little boy shouted at him that those people had it coming because if they hadn't tried to take advantage of Kyun, they wouldn't have fallen for the trick. The little girl agreed, shouting that they never tricked good people and only went after big bad guys like him. Hurt by their words, he wondered what made them think he looked like a bad guy. Kyun then told him that, in the apocalypse, everyone was just trying to survive, and they couldn't be blamed for it. He agreed with her and took out a knife, asking Kyun if it was fair that, now that they were in his hands, they couldn't blame him for whatever he decided to do. Kyun worriedly asked what he intended to do while the kids trembled in fear. He approached them, telling them that it had been a long time since he'd had fresh meat, and that today might finally be the day he got a taste. The kids cried in fear, shouting that they didn't want to be eaten. He smirked at their reaction, getting revenge on the little punks for questioning his good looks. Kyun suddenly shouted that if he was going to eat someone, he should eat her instead and let the kids go because they were still young. The little girl begged him not to eat Kyun, and the little boy shouted that adult meat wasn't tasty and that he should eat him instead because his meat was tender. Confused about what was going on, he stared at the 3 frauds acting all lovey-dovey, making him feel like the bad guy. Suddenly, the little girl coughed, and the little boy worriedly called out to his sister. Kyun shouted that the little girl, named Shaoling, was hurt, and that tying her up like that made it hard for her to breathe. He skeptically asked Kyun if they were trying to trick him into loosening the ropes so they could stab him, but then Ling coughed even more harshly. Still unconvinced, he remarked that her acting skills were better than Kyun's. The little boy shouted that they weren't lying, and Kyun pleaded with him, saying that if it continued, Ling would die. He ordered 2333 to check, and 2333 began scanning Ling's vital signs. The system reported that Ling had a severe infection in her body, which was already festering and spreading. Without treatment, she wouldn't survive more than 3 days. Suddenly, Ling coughed up blood, startling him. Without hesitation, he cut the ropes, freeing her. He then freed the little boy, and Kyun as well, both of whom rushed to Ling's side, worried as she collapsed in pain. A moment later, after changing her bandages, he stared at her wound and realized it was a gunshot wound. Shocked, he asked who could be so cruel to a child. Kyun furiously replied that it was the Thunder Legion. Kyun then sadly explained to him that the kid's mother was a regular customer at her store. When the apocalypse broke out, their family was buying milk tea there. She added that she had watched a lot of apocalyptic movies before, so when she saw someone biting another person on the street, she immediately felt that something was wrong and closed the store. Soon after, the news reported that it was a zombie virus outbreak and warned everyone not to go outside, leaving the customers trapped inside. At first, everyone remained united and encouraged each other to wait for rescue. But as days passed, food became scarce, and people's true natures began to surface. One day, a man grabbed bread from the kid's mother. The mother asked him what he was doing and reminded him that the food was supposed to be shared. The man scoffed and asked why her children should get the same amount of food as an adult when her child was so small, suggesting that the 3 of them could share just 1 portion. The mother begged him to return the food, explaining that her daughter was sick and couldn't go without eating. But the man ate the bread anyway, telling her that her daughter didn't look like she would survive for more than 2 days, so giving her food was a waste. It was better for someone else to have it. At that moment, the little boy bit the man's arm, shouting that it was his sister's food. Furious, the man grabbed the boy and yelled that he would kill him for daring to bite him. The mother screamed her son's name, Xiao Lei, in panic. Fortunately, Kyun arrived in time, tripping the man and forcing him to let go of Xiao Lai. Kyun caught Lei and confronted the man, asking why he was stealing from others. The man snapped back, asking her if she really considered that small piece of bread food, saying it wasn't enough to feed anyone and that starvation would soon kill them anyway. Kyun handed Lei back to his mother and scolded the man, calling him a coward for fighting children instead of zombies. Enraged, the man insulted her, shouting, "How dare you talk to me like that?" An old woman then interjected, pointing out how many people were there and that the small amount of food wasn't enough to feed everyone. She asked Kyun if she could spare a little more. A young man added that, in the worst-case scenario, they could repay her after the apocalypse was over. Kyun calmly explained to everyone that it was a milk tea shop, not a supermarket, and that all the food had already been taken out. The old woman, suspicious, pointed at the locked room and asked if Kyun had really taken everything out. She demanded to know why the door to that room was locked. Kyun replied simply that it was the changing room, but the old woman shouted that she didn't believe her and insisted she open it. Kyun retorted, asking why she should. The man then accused her of hiding food in the room, shouting that she was letting everyone starve while eating alone. The young man joined in, calling her selfish. The kid's mother tried to defend Kyun, reminding everyone that they wouldn't have survived until now if it weren't for her. However, the man shouted at her to shut up, claiming he would have gone home long ago if not for Kyun. The old woman agreed, shouting that if they had left earlier, they might have already been rescued by the government army and taken to a safe zone. Kyun calmly told them that if they wanted to leave, they could go now. This angered the man even more, and he shouted at her for being so arrogant. Suddenly, the young man, the old woman, and the lady grabbed Kyun and shouted for the man to break down the door. The man smashed the door open, shouting that she'd better just wait. When he looked inside, however, he found only clothes. Confused, he asked why there were so many skirts if it was a milk tea shop. The old woman scoffed, saying she knew Kyun wasn't a decent woman. The lady clung to her boyfriend, loudly claiming that good girls don't dress like that, and accusing Kyun of seducing someone. Kyun shouted at them, saying they were going too far, but before anyone could respond, the shop door suddenly exploded. A military vehicle bearing the logo of the Thunder Legion Guild crashed into the shop. A man wearing an eye patch got out and shouted, "There are people here." The man asked who are they, but one of the Thunder Legion eye-patched man grabbed the suspicious man and shouted that they were Thunder Legion, and if he didn't want to die, he should hand over the food. The man, terrified, begged them not to hit him and pointed at Kyun, shouting that she had hidden all the food. The men then noticed the women. One of them shouted to his brothers, excitedly declaring that it had been a long time since they'd seen such a beautiful woman. They chased after Kyun, the kid's mother, and the children as they fled. The arrogant lady from before was caught, and her boyfriend begged the men to spare him, offering up his girlfriend instead. One of the Thunder Legion men caught Kyun, shouting for her not to run because he would make her fly. Kyun immediately pulled out her knife and swung it at the man, but he dodged it. Angered, he pointed a gun at her and shouted that she was courting death. Suddenly, Ling appeared in front of Kyun to protect her, shouting for Kyun to be careful. Before Kyun could react, Ling was shot, leaving Kyun, Lei, and the kid's mother horrified. The eye-patched man scolded the shooter, calling him an idiot and asking if he didn't know that shooting would attract zombies. In frustration, the long-haired man shot the arrogant lady in the head and ordered his men to evacuate immediately, shouting for them to leave nothing behind.